Alright, the next phase is to set up the physical sky. So we go to our Arnold tab, we go under lights, and we click physical sky. Boom. And you can see I have a physical sky here. Now if I hit Alt B or Option B, you'll notice there's a circle here, or sphere. And what that sphere is I can click on it, I can scale it up or down. It really doesn't matter how big it is because it's virtual. It's going to be everywhere. Okay. But this is my sky dome. And on the sky dome, you might have seen in one of the other videos where you can use HDR lighting, this high-res image to actually illuminate and have a background. This one is just going to make a sky, but the benefit of this one is that the sky that I create, I can manipulate inside of here. Okay, so it already has a sky plugged into the color channel. That's the physical sky. I just happen to make a sky dome. And so I'm going to click on where it says color, this little input in the physical sky. I had to select it, then click, there's an input in the color, click there, and here's my sky. Here's the sun, basically. The elevation of the sun, the azimuth, and the intensity. Elevation is how high in the sky is the sun. 90 degrees would be directly above us. 45 is halfway between 12 o'clock noon, directly above us and at the horizon. And then the azimuth would be around the planet, where on the horizon, north, south, east, and west as I move that. Okay, so let's do a test render to see where our sun is. I position it so I could see light coming through because I want to get some nice shadows. And to do that, I'm going to go first. Let's make sure we adjust a few things. I'm going to click on this icon, which is my render settings. And depending on your machine, you can always boost this up. The default is HD 540 if your machine is running well, and this renders pretty fast. Well, if you're using ambient occlusion, it renders fast. When you get into lighting, it starts chugging. So for right now, I'm just going to keep it at 540, even though it'll run fast on mine, but just so you can see. I'm going to leave the Arnold renderer alone. I'm going to go to System. And everything should be okay. The only thing that might be a little different is, and you can contact me about this if you want, if you have an NVIDIA card or a recent one, you can actually render off the GPU, which is the graphics card, if you have like an RTX or something, and you can see I have one. Otherwise, it's going to use your main cores on your CPU. I'm going to do something that you don't have to do. It depends on your machine, but this is to help free up some cycles for me. So I'm going to uncheck auto detect threads, and I'm just going to say leave me 2 threads. And that basically means all my CPU power, all my different cores, I have 10 cores, 20 threads, save me 2. You probably don't have to do this on your machine, but especially if you're on like with a school IMAX or something. But this is just something to help it so that Maya doesn't take over my whole computer. And now that I have that, I'm just going to close this. I'm going to go to Arnold, and I'm going to hit Render. And this is what we get. Now your screen may look a little bit more like this. And let me just explain, because I have the most recent version of Maya and Arnold, so you may not have some of the extras, but this is essentially it. Here's my render. Everything's very shiny because I would have to change materials for different things. But right now I'm just worried about my lighting. And with this little gear that you might see, you see I have gamma and exposure that I can adjust. And I'll boost up my gamma to like maybe a 1.8 or so. And then my exposure will lighten that up even further so I can actually see a clean view. Okay. This is going to take longer depending on the machine you're on. But you'll notice I have this and I still have my physical sky. So I'm going to move. You see the sunlight coming here. And as I start to change the azimuth, you're going to see my lighting change. You see that? And it's updating. The lower the sun is, the more it'll pour into the room. So if I lower the elevation, you notice that, and get it more close to the actual horizon. The more I get close to the horizon, not only does it change to a sunset and starts putting stuff into the room, but it starts pulling more light in, which looks really nice. So you let it go through these rendering settings, and once again, mine is taking a little extra longer because these materials are all shiny, right? So if yours probably won't be if they're all Lamberts, which is what the default is. But yeah, this looks like a very plasticky, shiny house, so that's not exactly what what I might want. But I'm getting some really nice lighting pouring into here, and all I'd have to do is just start selecting maybe certain models. Oops, I don't want to touch the table, and I want to make sure not to get the glass. Might get the frames, the curtains, and definitely some of the structure. Okay. Oops, and you. Hit 5, and I'm just going to assign, for right now, I'm just going to assign a Lambert to all of those. And what you will see is that now that clears it up so not everything is all mirrored. Now, this is rendering pretty fast, and you see it's faster now because not everything is so reflective. The more reflective surfaces you have, the longer it's going to take to render. But you may notice that there's a lot of noise in here. So how I would fix that, and once again, this is going to add more render time. This is why it is not a requirement, but it is for people who are going to be dipping in. And if you have a, I'll make a video later if you have an RTX card or even a GTX card, how you can speed this up. But let's assume you're on a Mac or you're on a computer that's not a gaming computer, doesn't have a powerful recent, video card, and you're running everything off the CPU. I go to my render stats, and under Arnold Render, this is probably more of a diffuse issue. So where it says diffuse, I'm going to increase the samples. That's like increasing the resolution. Now you don't want to go nuts on this because the higher these numbers are, the longer this takes. So right now it's at 11 seconds. I'm just going to boost this up to about 8. Now, it was taking 11 seconds. And we can see it is going slower. And this is why doing the ambient occlusion is much better. But, well, easier, I will say. Not better, but easier. But what you'll notice is now look at the noise is cleaning up a whole lot more from boosting up the samples of the diffuse, which is how it's lit. So definitely taking more than 11 seconds, but getting a much cleaner shot. So what you'd want to do if you're doing this is not wait to the last second. Give yourself time. Renders can take as long as they take. In other words, they can be 5 seconds. They can be 5 hours, depending on what settings and what you're trying to render. So a 5-hour render is not a requirement. In fact, please do not do that. But if you have a lot of things going on and your machine is slow and you're cranking up things, then it could take a minute. So just be aware, right? So we can see that, yeah, it looks way better, but it's definitely taking more time to do it. It was 11 seconds before. Now, if I use my video card, yes, it's going to be a lot faster. But it has to be a specific video card. An NVIDIA card that is at least a GeForce GTX, preferably an RTX, either 20 series or 30 series. If you don't know what any of that means, you probably don't have one. So that pretty much is, don't worry about it. But now I've got this, it went from 11 seconds to almost 2 minutes. But now I've tweaked it out here how I want it. That looks pretty good. I don't want it blown out or washed out. I still want to have contrast. I just want it, ooh, that looks good right about there. And then once I have it, File. Let's go to Save Image Options first. Make sure you check Apply Gamma and Exposure, which means it will save these settings. And then I just do a File, Save Image. And I would call this one like Room Taiwan .jpg or something like that. Okay. And then I'd move around, and then I'd do another render, let it finish, and then do that. Okay. And that's basically how you would do it. Now, I can adjust my lighting here, when I actually, let's stop it updating. Click that. Select the sky dome, and then I can go back and change different things. I can even change my tint. So, I could change the color of the light. I can change, so if I change the sky tint, and I'm just going to, while I'm doing my testing, I'm going to drop this back down to 2, which will render faster. So now I can go in, and if I want to change my sky tint like that, and then I could change my sun tint, and that's going to be the light coming in. That's a bit extreme for like a, warm evening, so probably desaturate that. And I can even kind of mess with it where maybe the sky tint is more of a blue, but the sun tint is more of a warm color coming in. So I have a lot of control inside of here. But that's essentially it. Get your scenes. Once again, this is extra credit, or if you have a machine, or if you're an Art86 and you're like, hey, I want to get into this stuff, this is how you get them to start looking very realistic. But all that's required is that ambient occlusion pass. Let me know if you have any questions.